All right, you've got a big document in front of you. Maybe it's dense, maybe it's long, and you need to pull out the vital information, the stuff that really matters, without getting bogged down.
Right.
That's what we do here on the deep dive. We take those resources, those documents, and really extract the key knowledge.
Yeah, the insights that give you a real understanding. Quickly, effectively.
Exactly. We're giving you the sort of express route to being well-informed. We're not just skimming the surface.
No, definitely not. We're diving into the core, pulling out the most important bits, the interesting stuff, and, connecting the dots so you actually get it.
Today, our deep dive takes us into the pretty fascinating world of planning and urban design standards. We're looking specifically at a document one of you shared, UP 702 Planning Eder Blinder Design Standards.pdf.
And it's comprehensive. I mean, really comprehensive.
Yeah, it's not light reading. It covers, everything from basic planning principles, the whole urban design process, right down to specific things you need to think about for community development.
It really is quite remarkable, the breadth. It touches on the big vision for community's future, but also the nitty-gritty, like designing a safe sidewalk or understanding environmental risks.
Just how interconnected it all is.
Totally. Shaping the places we live.
So our goal today, pull out the most crucial insights, the really interesting bits from this resource. We want to give you a solid grasp without, drowning you in detail.
Right, the aha moments, not the info dump.
Exactly. Okay, so let's start big picture. The comprehensive plan. What's the basic idea there?
Well, think of it like the community's official blueprint for the future. It's the roadmap adopted by the local government saying, here's how we plan to grow, develop, and importantly, conserve things over the long haul.
So it's way more than just deciding where to put buildings.
Oh, absolutely. Its job is much broader. It starts by setting out goals, the community's aspirations. Then, critically, it looks at how things are now existing conditions, trends.
Taking stock.
Exactly. And from there, it paints that future picture, physical, social, economic, what does the community want to be? And finally, it lays out the policies, the guidelines to actually get there.
So if you want to know where your town's headed in, say, 20 years, this is the document.
That's the key insight, yeah. This is your guide. It's not just zoning, it's the whole vision.
Sounds like it touches pretty much everything that makes a community function.
It really does. A good comp plan looks at the economy, transportation, community facilities, schools, utilities, that kind of thing, housing, the environment, land use, human services, all these interrelated pieces, and how they fit together, not just locally, but often considering the wider region too.
And you said long term. This isn't something they redo every couple of years.
No, not usually. They're looking way out, typically 20 years, sometimes even more. It's a long-range perspective.
So why is that important for, regular folks or businesses?
Well, the most crucial thing is guidance. It guides decisions, whether it's the local government deciding on infrastructure spending or a private developer planning a project.
They look to the plan.
Ideally, yes. It provides that framework. It influences decisions that ultimately shape, quality of life, the environment, everything, for everyone.
Okay, the North Star for development. Got it. Now, are there specific things that every comprehensive plan has to include?
Well, according to this document, yeah, there are essentials: land use, transportation, housing, and community facilities. Those four are usually considered the core.
The big four.
Right. But then, depending on the plan's specific goals or what state law requires, you can definitely add other elements.
Makes sense. Tailored to the place. Okay, let's shift a bit to urban design. How does that fit in with this bigger planning picture?
Urban design planning, well, it shares some DNA with comprehensive planning. You're still collecting data, involving the public, bringing in experts.
Yeah.
But the big difference is the heavy use of three-dimensional design tools. It's much more visual. It's about exploring physical possibilities, communicating ideas about what a place could actually look and feel like.
So less abstract maps and text. Or visualizing buildings, streets, space.
Precisely. And because these urban design plans often directly affect a lot of different people, groups, stakeholders, public outreach is just vital, absolutely critical.
How do they do that?
Oh, various ways. Things like steering committees with diverse representation, smaller focus groups to dig into specifics, big public meetings to get broad feedback. It's all about understanding community values, liabilities, assets, the vision for that particular area.
And who's usually kicking off these kinds of downtown design plans?
It can be a few different players, cities themselves, obviously, but also downtown organizations, business improvement districts, BDs, Even regional agencies sometimes sponsor them.
The document also brings up mixed-use developments. How do they fit in?
Right, mixed use. These are usually more site-specific projects. Think redeveloping old industrial sites or creating those lifestyle centers you see, or even big office parks that deliberately mix in housing or shops.
Okay.
The main goal is typically creating these walkable, lively places, live, work, play, all in one area, usually a mix of office, retail, housing.
And who's behind those?
Developers.
Often private developers, yeah. But you also see redevelopment agencies, public bodies focused on revitalization, and big institutions like universities or hospitals getting involved, especially if they want to improve their surroundings.
Okay, so we've got community-wide planning, site-specific design. What about thinking even bigger, regionally?
Yeah, that brings us to regional comprehensive plans,
Mhm.
taking that wider view, looking beyond just one city or town, addressing issues that cross boundaries.
Like transportation or maybe watershed management.
Exactly, things that need coordination. And it's
Okay.
really important, the document stresses, to check state laws because the required elements for a regional plan can vary quite a bit state by state. But are there common elements you usually see?
Generally, yes. The document lists quite a few typical ones, things like the basic planning assumptions, population trends across the region, the regional economy, existing land use patterns, the big transportation systems.
Hmm.
Also, regional housing trends, community facilities distribution, natural features, farmland, hazard areas, sometimes regional density studies, public involvement summaries, identifying urban growth areas, policy statements, and crucially, implementation recommendations.
So it's about coordinating across jurisdictions.
Precisely, tackling stuff no single town can solve alone.
Okay, let's zoom back in. Neighborhoods. How does planning address needs at that really local level?
Neighborhood plans often dig into the details of existing land use and zoning right there in that specific area. It's usually part of assessing what the neighborhood needs.
And communicating that is key, I imagine.
Absolutely. The document makes a great point. This info needs to be presented clearly. Simple language, easy to understand visuals, no jargon that just alienates residents.
Makes total sense. What about infrastructure within a neighborhood? Roads, pipes, that sort of thing.
Yeah, infrastructure quality is obviously vital for a neighborhood, but fixing or upgrading it is often handled citywide through capital improvement programs or CIPs.
So less direct neighborhood control.
Often, yeah. So if a neighborhood plan identifies needs, the action might be to petition the Public Works Department or the City Council to get those upgrades prioritized in the city's overall plan.
And transportation within the neighborhood. How's that handled?
Local transportation plans can be standalone documents or part of the main comprehensive plan. They're usually done by the local government or transit providers, but, and this is important, in coordination with the regional MPOs, the metropolitan planning organizations, and the state DOT.
So multiple players involved.
Definitely. And these plans are key for deciding which local projects get funding and build short-term fixes, long-term investments. Public and agency coordination is essential for them to actually work.
Okay, so we have all these different types of plans. But a plan is just a document until something actually happens. How do they become reality? Adoption and implementation.
Exactly. And this is critical. The document really hammers home the need to document everything, not just how the public was involved, but the technical reasons, the data behind the plan's conclusions.
It's accountability.
Right. And the plan needs a clear roadmap for implementation. What steps, in what order, who's responsible, what are the costs? It has to be spelled out.
No vague promises.
Hopefully not. And for technical plans, like transportation plans, a simple lay reader executive summary is crucial so people can grasp the main points without wading through engineering details.
And the adoption process itself.
It involves public review, outreach, formal hearings, getting that community feedback. The plan might need revisions based on that input. And throughout, you have to pay close attention to the money side costs, revenues, potential shortfalls, funding options. That's often where the rubber meets the road.
Absolutely. Okay, the document dives deeper into some key elements. Housing, economy, parks. Let's tackle housing first. What goes into a housing plan?
Well, the form really depends on the purpose. If it's part of the big comprehensive plan, state laws usually say what needs to be in it. Typically, that means an inventory of current housing, an assessment of needs present and future clear goals, and an action plan.
Action plan meaning how you'll meet the goals.
Exactly. The document even gives examples from New Jersey and Washington state regs talking about needing land for low and moderate income housing and ensuring enough land is zoned for diverse housing types.
Gotcha. What about economic development plans? What's key there?
Background studies are crucial. You need to really understand the community's or region's economic strengths and weaknesses and assess the desired growth within the larger economic picture. Regional, state, national trends all play a role.
And how does that connect back to housing? Seems like they'd need to be linked.
Oh, absolutely critical. They need to be tightly coordinated. If you're planning for new jobs, you have to plan for where those workers will live.
Right. Otherwise, people commute long distances or can't afford to live where they work.
Exactly. You end up exporting your housing needs. The document stresses that local governments need to be proactive, really take steps to make sure there's enough housing for the jobs they hope to create.
Makes sense. Okay, moving on to parks. How are they classified, and how do communities figure out what they need?
Park classification systems just help bring some order, create a common language.
Mhm.
Parks are often categorized by service area, like is it a neighborhood park or a regional one,
Size.
size, population served, and the types of facilities offered.
So different types for different needs.
Right. And instead of relying on old national standards, many communities now do what's called a level of service or LOS study.
LOS study.
Yeah, it quantifies what recreational facilities and how much parkland acreage is actually needed based on that specific community's needs and projected growth. These LOS studies are really important for planning and also for legally defending things like mandatory parkland dedication or impact fees from developers.
Ah, okay. Legal backing. What are the core principles for planning parks and open space?
The document lists several key ones. Balance offering a variety of experiences, shaping how open space can influence community growth patterns, sustainability thinking long-term maintenance, financially and physically, urban design, how parks fit into the built environment, and connections linking parks and natural areas like through greenways, and of course, reviewing applicable laws.
And protecting sensitive environmental areas. How do plans address that?
Plans definitely need clear goals, policies, and guidelines for protecting critical areas, wetlands, steep slopes, habitats, etc., often with maps showing where these areas are.
And how do they enforce that protection?
Through regulatory tools. Zoning is a big one, restricting development types. Subdivision controls, health regulations, specific wetland rules. These can include things like overlay zones with extra restrictions, permit requirements, setbacks or buffers, and other controls on how land can be used.
Okay, let's shift back to the human element. Public participation. How important is that in planning?
It's fundamental, absolutely fundamental. The document points out a few key reasons. It involves citizens in decisions affecting them, which builds support. It brings in valuable local knowledge, which can actually make the plans better, and it fosters a sense of community by bringing people together.
So it's not just ticking a box.
It shouldn't be. For it to work, participation needs to be active, meaningful. People need to feel like their input matters, that it leads to a sense of achievement. It might even mean rethinking traditional planning procedures.
And who gets involved? How do you choose stakeholders?
Well, you think about who's affected, who has an interest. A key reason, the document notes, is jurisdiction who has decision-making power. If a project involves city land, county parks, and state wetlands, you need reps from all three involved.
Right, the decision makers. The document mentions visioning and charrettes. What are those?
Visioning is usually a broader process, bringing diverse community members together to think about the future, brainstorm ideas, identify shared values, and create a kind of strategic action plan.
Big picture thinking.
Yeah. Charrettes are more focused, more intense. They're workshops with a very specific goal. Create a feasible plan for a project or area. Key thing about charrettes is informed decision-making, legal, financial, engineering, feasibility are all considered right there. Design is used heavily to visualize options and reach consensus.
So visioning sets direction. Charrettes create the actual plan. Interesting. Even seating arrangements matter.
It sounds minor, but yeah. How people are seated can subtly affect interaction. A U-shape might make the facilitator less dominant, easier for small groups to report back. Small, separate tables might encourage more focused group work. Little things can make a difference.
Fascinating. Okay, technology. How are computers changing planning?
Hugely. Tools like hypermedia, multimedia on a PC and the internet are changing things. The internet offers a virtual space for participation, information sharing.
And visualization.
Exactly. That's a major advantage. Representing complex data visually. Think GIS, geographic information systems, layering map data, showing environmental impacts, or 3D models in simulations. It gives the public unprecedented access to information in an understandable format. That can really enhance interaction, exploring alternatives.
Making abstract data tangible. The document mentions air quality as an example.
Yeah, the Lake Champlain Basin example. It highlights that an airshed where air circulates isn't fixed. It changes seasonally with weather. Pollution affecting the lake might come from far away. Computer tools let planners analyze these complex dynamic systems.
Very cool. Another thing mentioned is the urban heat island effect. Planning's role there.
Right. Cities get hotter than surrounding rural areas because dark surfaces, roofs, asphalt absorb more sun. Trees and vegetation cool things down through evapotranspiration.
So replacing green space with buildings makes it hotter.
Especially in hot, dry climates. Planning can fight this with green infrastructure, green roofs, permeable pavement, encouraging lighter colored materials, and actively preserving and planting trees and vegetation.
Okay, let's talk water resources, watersheds and aquifers.
A watershed is just the land area draining to a common point, a river, lake. Catchment areas, sub-watersheds are smaller parts of it. Good watershed planning means understanding the baseline conditions, water quality, flow, ecosystems.
And urbanization impacts that.
Massively. More impervious surfaces, roads, roofs mean more runoff, less water soaking in. Planners use models to understand these impacts and develop plans to protect or restore watershed health.
And aquifers, the underground water.
Right. Underground layers holding groundwater. You have confined ones deep down and unconfined ones near the surface. They get recharged by rain seeping down. Protecting them from contamination is critical. Planning tools like zoning or wellhead protection areas restrict risky land uses near recharge zones.
Makes sense. What about living with water, floodplains and wetlands?
Floodplains, the flat areas next to rivers prone to flooding, are risky for development but ecologically important. They help with water quality, habitat. Rivers naturally meander, shift course over time. For urban streams, the idea of buffers is key, usually 3 zones: a protected natural edge right by the stream, a middle managed zone, and an outer zone connecting to developed areas. Wetlands, like marshes, are incredibly productive ecosystems. They reduce storm damage, filter pollutants, provide vital habitat, hugely beneficial.
Coastal areas have their own challenges, right? Erosion, storms.
Absolutely. Setbacks from the coastline are crucial, considering erosion rates and the protective role of dunes. Estuaries where rivers meet the sea are really vulnerable to non-point source pollution like runoff. And sea level rise is a huge growing concern: more flooding, saltwater intrusion, ecosystem changes.
Moving to the ground itself. Soils and geology. Why are they important in planning?
Soil texture matters a lot for designing things like wastewater systems or stormwater facilities that rely on infiltration. Soil surveys, like from the NRCS, provide maps showing soil types based on texture, slope, drainage.
And GIS helps analyze this.
Yeah, GIS and environmental models let you layer soil data with climate, terrain, vegetation. You can analyze complex interactions, even predict biodiversity patterns sometimes.
Okay, back to flooding risk. Probability and regulation.
Flooding is water overflowing onto dry land. Understanding the probability is key. You hear about the 100-year flood. That's a flood with a 1% chance in any given year.
But that can change, right, with development.
Exactly. More upstream development, more impervious surfaces can increase runoff and make those 100-year events happen more often. The National Flood Insurance Program, NFIP, and local rules often use that 100-year flood level for regulations. Managing floodplains is a shared job. FEMA, state, local governments all involved.
What about erosion and sedimentation as hazards?
They're natural processes, but become hazards when they impact people or development. Rivers cause the biggest economic losses from erosion and sedimentation. Sedimentation used to be beneficial, building floodplains, but now it can damage developed areas, clog drains.
And hurricanes.
Yeah.
SLOs,
Right. The SLO-SHAISH model helps predict storm surge for evacuation planning. It can sometimes show wider inundation than NFIP maps. With hurricanes, it seems simple wind and water, but water damage, storm surge, flooding, is often more influenced by land use planning. Offshore depth, hurricane intensity, dunes all play a role.
What about landslides? Slope instability.
Certain construction practices, cutting into slopes, removing vegetation, can trigger landslides. So creating good landslide hazard maps, showing steep slopes, past slides, is a top priority. Getting geologists involved is crucial.
And regulations.
Hillside development ordinances are tools to address slope stability, wastewater, vegetation, roads on hillsides, while balancing things like fire safety and aesthetics. Maintenance requirements for properties in risky areas are also important.
Sinkholes seem like a tricky hazard.
They are. They cause structural failure, flooding, stagnant water, potential groundwater contamination. The flood risk is often underestimated, and liability isn't always clear legally. Urbanization often makes sinkhole flooding worse, leading to property and tax revenue losses.
Earthquakes, seismic risks.
FEMA has recommended building code provisions for seismic safety in new buildings. It's also vital for local governments to assess seismic risk in their capital improvement planning, identifying critical facilities like hospitals that need upgrades to withstand earthquakes.
And wildfires, especially in that wild-land-urban interface, the WUI.
Wildfires are natural, ecologically important in some places, but decades of fire suppression plus development pushing into wildlands created new dangers in the WUI. Planners there must understand wildfire causes and mitigation. We've seen the risks in places like Oakland and Los Alamos.
But design can help.
Definitely. Design principles learned from past fires can minimize both ecological impact and danger to homes and businesses.
What about less visible threats, like toxic materials?
They're a major hazard: inhalation, ingestion, skin absorption. Inhalation is often the biggest immediate worry. Long-term ingestion risks include cancers, genetic defects. Planning needs to consider evacuation distances using resources like the DOT's Emergency Response Guidebook.
Tsunami.
Need to differentiate between distant source and local ones. Local ones arrive much faster. Risk is higher in shallow bays, low-lying coasts, lower where you have high coastal cliffs.
And noise. Seems minor, but it's in the document.
It's an environmental factor, yeah. The document has a table showing noise levels and how they impact different land uses. Site design, like barriers, can block ground-level noise. Aircraft noise is much harder to mitigate with site design alone.
Okay, shifting to how communities are shaped. Density and parking seem fundamental.
Totally. Residential density is usually dwelling units per acre, DUAC. Ranges from low rural to high urban. Parking rules heavily influence site plans and project economics. The document wisely suggests scrutinizing standards to avoid requiring too much parking.
And mixed use fits in here.
Yeah, mixed-use development incorporates different uses, encourages walking, provides services locally. Transit-oriented development, TOD, is related higher density near transit to reduce car dependence and parking needs.
What about designing specifically for sustainability or community feel?
Conservation development aims to protect valuable ecological areas on a site, sometimes using density transfer shifting development away from sensitive spots. Open space planning should happen early, aiming for connected networks like greenways, not just leftover scraps. Vehicular access in residential areas needs careful thought: public streets, internal drives, drop-offs. Site coverage, how much land is built on, is regulated by zoning and stormwater rules.
Housing itself comes in many forms.
Yeah, the document mentions multifamily, mid-rise, high-rise, things like project size, shape, core location influence design, and factory-built housing. Modular, panelized, pre-cut, manufactured homes. Key thing is, they all must meet building codes.
Schools are key community hubs. Planning considerations.
For elementary schools, pedestrian access, safety, proximity to homes are key. Middle and high schools need to serve larger areas, maybe need sports fields, consider commuting patterns, transit. School grounds are also critical for education. Need to integrate outdoor learning with practical things like security, utilities.
And school building design for safety and function.
Need to plan layouts for admin, assembly, community use, media centers, etc. Site planning for public access, entrances near parking. Safety design includes things like sensitive building edges near paths, careful window placement for visibility, clear play areas with few blind spots, good signage.
Healthcare needs are diverse too, different facility types.
Document covers independent living, assisted living, skilled nursing, Alzheimer's care. Also CCRCs, continuing care, retirement communities offering multiple levels, medical campuses with multiple buildings. Integrated facilities like medical offices combined with outpatient care are common convenience, planning for expansion, especially parking. Campus considerations include connectivity, balancing parking for doctors versus patients, building visibility.
Accessibility is non-negotiable. Key points for pedestrians with disabilities.
So many details matter. Passing spaces on narrow sidewalks, turning space for wheelchairs, careful curb ramp placement avoiding drain grates, puddles. Driveway crossings, parallel ones, offer level landings but can be tricky. Setback crossings might be better. Combining parking lots in commercial areas reduces driveway crossings. Good crosswalk markings, like the ladder style. Curb extensions shorten crossing distance. improve visibility, avoiding clutter that blocks sightlines, preventing parking too close to corners using curb extensions.
And keeping sidewalks maintained is crucial for accessibility.
Absolutely essential. Bad sidewalks force people, especially those with mobility issues, into the street. Maintenance needs quick response, often flagged by residents or city programs.
What about vehicles? Turning radii for trucks.
Yeah, need to design intersections considering truck turning needs, like the SU-30 example. Large vehicles might track over sidewalks at tight corners. AH2 has general radii. More detailed specs exist for off-street design, like loading docks.
Trails for recreation and connection. Different types.
Destination trails often in greenways, parks. Designed for enjoyment, harmony with nature, accessible. Linking trails often alongside roads, connecting places, shared use in lower traffic areas, maybe separate paths on busy roads. Need to consider design speed, road crossings. Nature trails focused on experiencing nature. Good plans integrate these different trail types into a network.
Public transit basics.
Bus transit is the bulk of the U.S. fleet. Fixed routes, schedules, main types, local frequent stops, express, few stops faster, limited stop, in between. Integrating modes is key. Intermodal facilities, like the examples in Tacoma and D.C., bringing rail, bus, etc. together.
Waste management. Seems essential, but maybe less glamorous.
Essential, definitely. Transfer stations consolidate waste for efficient transport to landfills. Government plans usually have a hierarchy. Source reduction first, then recycling, composting, waste to energy, landfilling last. Special studies inform these plans.
Rainfall and runoff mentioned briefly. Relevance.
Fundamental for stormwater management, flood prevention, drainage design, water quality. A runoff frequency spectrum helps understand how often different rainfall amounts occur, which informs infrastructure design for both typical and extreme events.
Water supply systems. Basic components.
Source, river, lake, groundwater well, conduit, pipes, pumps, treatment plant if needed, storage, tanks, reservoirs, and the distribution network to users. Planners need to consider all these for a reliable system.
More on parks and open space classifications. Community parks, greenways.
Classifications are flexible, adaptable locally. Community parks are generally larger than neighborhood parks, serve wider areas, offer more variety. Athletic complexes focus on sports fields, often with support facilities. Greenways are corridors for conservation, open space, aesthetics, passive recreation, wildlife movement. Can be urban, regional, state level. Planning involves balancing public use and environmental protection, plus education. Conservation parks focus primarily on preservation.
How do conservation plans specifically work?
They use inventory maps of resources to set protection levels, permitted uses, understand relationships between areas, leads to composite overlay maps, guiding acquisition and management priorities.
Playgrounds designing for fun and safety.
Key considerations: location safety, away from traffic, visibility for supervision, noise buffering. Open designs for play structures, aid monitoring, accessibility. Need hard surfaces for some things, but not under fall zones. Shade is crucial. Restrooms depend on playground type location. Maintenance is critical for safety design, should factor it in. Include a process.
Agriculture, barns, animal waste.
Barn types vary. Enclosed barns needed for some livestock to control disease. Animal waste management is huge potential. Water, air, soil impacts. Proper storage, treatment, disposal are key planning issues in farm areas.
Forest management.
Federal agencies like the U.S. Forest Service manage public forests. States regulate forest practices on public and private land through their own agencies and policies.
Defining regions for planning.
Can be political, biophysical, ecological, sociocultural, economic boundaries. Often a mix, especially for metro regions. Planning focuses often on state and metro levels because issues cross local lines. Maps vary by agency discipline. MPOs are key for regional transport planning. Other bodies like councils of government handle broader issues.
And defining neighborhoods.
Its complex social and spatial context matter. Depends on the purpose, expected function, existing organizations. Boundary drawing is often negotiated, can be political. Contrast this with biophysical regions like ecoregions based on environmental factors.
Historic preservation, key considerations.
National Register lists many places. Locally, communities create historic districts via ordinances, needing surveys, maps, review boards, often with history architecture experts for CLG status. Property owner opposition can happen due to oversight. But without local review, character can erode as other boards don't focus on aesthetics history. Alterations need a certificate of appropriateness, guided by Secretary of Interior standards.
Waterfront revitalization.
Waterfronts often have mixed uses: industrial, commercial, transport, rec, residential. Successful redevelopment usually includes several coexisting uses. Cleanup of past industrial contamination is fundamental soil analysis, potentially high costs. Coordinated framework plans guide redevelopment, showing plazas, parks, promenades, water connections. Water bodies encourage edge activities, sports.
Arts districts, fostering creative hubs.
Can be formal or informal clusters. Common elements, arts groups, galleries, theaters, studios, supporting businesses, unique character. Planning focuses on pedestrian orientation, public spaces, signage, mixed uses, public art. Needs long-term vision, planning, commitment, responsiveness to community, coordination, specialized management, evaluation, economic impact, cultural vitality.
Office parks.
Trends, often guided by covenants restrictions, uses, construction, environment, aesthetics. Trend is away from isolated parks towards mixed use, master plan places with amenities, transit pedestrian focus to attract younger workers.
Main streets, key design elements.
Storefronts, display windows, building height bulk, setbacks, openings, doors, windows, roof shape all influence character. Traditional storefronts designed for retail. On-street parking calms traffic, narrow street feel. Longer-term parking best located behind buildings or nearby, not dominating the frontage like strip malls.
Identifying land for conservation.
Starts with existing plants inventories. Identify primary areas severely constrained, wetlands, floodplains, steep slopes, and secondary areas, also valuable, woodlands, historic sites, prime farmland, scenic views.
Infill development, making it work in existing neighborhoods.
Success means harmonizing with surroundings functionally, visually, enhancing neighborhood quality, avoiding incompatible uses, respecting existing facades. Can be opportunities for historic rehab, landmark preservation.
Site analysis essentials.
Physiography, elevation, slope from topomaps, steep slopes are challenging. Hydrology, groundwater, surface water, water table depth, quality, aquifer yield, flow direction, wells, surface water features. The specifics inventory depend on the proposed use, zoning change, infrastructure siting, conservation, etc.
Guiding development with zoning and design guidelines.
Zoning regs, height, FAR, density, setbacks, parking shape, development. Compare existing uses to zoned allowances. Design guidelines, supplement zoning, clarifying desired architectural character windows, materials, signage. Documenting neighborhood character, sketches, elevations, is richer than focusing just on single historic buildings. Streetscape character matters too. Street width, building patterns, trees, lighting, paving, furniture. Mapping consistent street characteristics and using streetscape standards helps.
Building form and density optimization.
Residential floor plates can be flexible. Trend towards larger floor plates in R&D, Class A office. Retail needs vary hugely. Gross density includes infrastructure versus net density excludes it. FSR, floor area ratio, used for commercial density.
Density's role in urban revitalization.
Neighborhood density provides population income needed for revitalization. Studies suggest a certain number of new housing units within walking distance helps. Site coverage depends on setbacks, lot lines, lot shape size. Different building size heights can achieve varying densities with the same coverage.
Designing for security. Defensible space.
Concept involves security layers: perimeter, building exterior, interior control. Security lighting helps natural surveillance, letting people see and be seen. Design elements: well-lit visible entrances, visible parking, strategic attendant location, reception areas with parking views, limited use of high walls, avoiding blind spots.
Promoting walkability.
How easy pleasant it is to walk. Need adequate sidewalk space, furniture, walk-talk zones. High road network connectivity prevents funneling traffic onto pedestrian-unfriendly arterials. Site planning matters. Locate car stuff away from sidewalks. Setback garages include front window porches. Median refuges on wide streets, angled crosswalks help. Human scale design, details like display windows, benches make pedestrians feel welcome.
Green building.
LED is a rating system for green buildings. Projects earn points, sustainable sites, water efficiency, energy, materials, indoor quality for different certification levels, certified to platinum. Document shows a sample checklist.
Streetscape elements like trees and furniture.
Trees, usually in planting strips, residential, or container strips, commercial. Consider mature size, climate suitability. Paving is visually prominent, depends on scale, character, climate, durability, traction, maybe heating coils. Furniture like bollards, racks usually in the curb zone. Transit stops need integration, amenities.
Population projections. Basics.
Estimate future population based on births, deaths, migration. Calculated in varying detail. Births based on women of childbearing age, fertility rates, vary by age, race, SES. Migration affected by economy, housing, amenities. Purpose of projection matters for detail methodology. Technical reliability and uncertainty are important.
Assessing park and recreation needs. Demand analysis.
Typically involves steps like defining park types, desired activities, open space standards, assessing current supply, gauging demand surveys, setting population service minimums, setting LOS targets per park type, calculating overall system LOS, documenting results, identifies themes, priorities.
Environmental impact assessment process.
Comprehensively consider likely outcomes, allocate resources effectively, early consultation, understanding environmental laws are crucial. Key steps: scoping, identifying resources, setting methodologies, analyzing effects, collaborating on project refinement to minimize harm.
Maps as planning tools. Key concepts.
Maps represent place at a time to convey info. Fundamental. Scale matters. Large scale, more detail, small area, small scale, less detail, large area. Basic elements. Title, legend, north arrow, many types used. Topographic, property, land use, transportation, zoning, environmental, infrastructure, demographic, historic, future land use. Online sources for aerial photos. DOQs are distortion-corrected aerials for GIS. USGS topo maps show contours, water, vegetation, cultural features. Image classification identifies ground features and satellite images based on reflectance.
Implementing GIS successfully.
Need management and user support. Team approach best. Comprehensive user needs assessment is vital to guide application development, align with workflows, data needs.
3D visualization tools.
Range from simple blocks to realistic renderings, textures, lighting. Static views versus animation, pre-recorded fly-throughs. Real-time 3D allows interactive exploration, walk or fly-through. Growing niche for quickly visualizing changes.
Legal frameworks. Nuisance. Vested rights.
Nuisance is interference with land use enjoyment, public or private. Vested rights are rights to use property. Government can't limit, usually established by substantial spending based on government approval.
Due process. Takings. Constitutional points.
Procedural due process, right to fair hearing before deprivation of life, liberty, property. Fifth Amendment takings clause, just compensation if private property taken for public use. Applies to physical and regulatory takings. Categorical takings, physical occupation, loss of all economic value, always require compensation. Others consider investment-backed expectations. Exactions, dedications fees, need nexus and rough proportionality to development impact.
Key federal environmental laws.
Many impact planning. NEPA, Clean Air Act, Clean Water Act, Endangered Species Act, CAA, Air Quality Control Regions, State Implementation Plans, ESA, protects listed species habitat, prohibits taking, CWA, Water Quality Goals, Beneficial Uses, Criteria, Discharge Permits, NPDES, Anti-Degradation,
Local zoning basics.
Ordinances, text plus maps, divide community into districts with rules, use, height, setbacks, common types, residential, commercial, industrial, agricultural, special purpose overlay districts exist, zoning amendments, rezoning, typical ordinance components, purpose, district regs, performance standards, admin definitions, incentive inclusionary zoning are tools.
More flexible zoning. PUDs, UGAs.
PUDs, planned unit development, merge zoning subdivision for flexible large area development, mixed uses. UGAs, urban growth areas, in comp plans, encourage development inside, discourage outside, promote compact growth. Need to calculate land needs based on growth density targets, identify infill redevelopment potential within UGA.
Funding infrastructure, impact fees.
Fees on new development for new expanded capital facilities needed by that growth. Roads, schools, parks, utilities. Not for maintenance or existing facilities used by existing development. For off-site facilities, unlike developer-provided on-site infrastructure, each project pays proportionate share if facility serves multiple projects.
Permanent land protection tools.
Conservation easements. Voluntary legal contracts restricting use development for conservation, usually forever. PDR. Purchase of development rights, voluntary sale of development rights to Gofalin Trust for cash, land restricted, often farm open space, stays private, usually no public access.
Supporting agriculture. Zoning, LS.
Ag zoning protects farmland, complements UGAs, buffers preserve farms, right to farm laws exist. Example, Lancaster County, PA uses PDR plus low-density ag zoning for UGBs. LS, land evaluation and site assessment system. Objective numerical tool evaluating farmland quality development suitability. Score weights factors. Example calculation provided.
Preserving historic structures. Brownfields.
Section 106, NHPA, requires federal agencies consider effects on National Register properties. State laws protect state registers. Private owners often can alter, demolish listed buildings without other approvals. Growing desire for brownfield redevelopers to minimize environmental impacts. Brownfields Revitalization Act, 2002, provides cleanup reuse tools, capital improvement programs, CIPs. Key elements: identify facility needs, timing, costs, financing, relate to comp plan, financial analysis, set priorities, public review, final program document.
Financing redevelopment. TIF.
TIF, tax increment financing, captures future property tax increases in blighted areas to fund improvements. Requires blight finding, but for a condition. Gives broad powers within TIF districts to encourage private investment.
Development costs and financing.
Different developer types financing, small, local versus large corporate. Financial structure evil debt plus equity mix negotiated. Investors seek positive leverage, return borrowing cost, soft costs, architecture, legal, taxes, insurance, fees, marketing, financing, interest, working capital. Some objective, some dev fees depend on complexity risk. Developers need competitive returns due to risky liquidity.
Example project costs.
Document shows simplified pro forma, hard soft costs, financing fees, total cost, net profit before land cost, benchmark profit implied land price to hit benchmark.
Wow, that truly was a deep dive. We've covered an incredible amount of ground in planning and urban design standards, from, the really high-level comprehensive plans down to the specifics of playground safety or sidewalk design.
It really highlights how interconnected everything is, doesn't it? You can't plan transportation without thinking about land use, or economic development without considering housing. It's all one complex system.
Yeah, definitely. And hopefully this dive gives you, our listener, a solid foundation for understanding these complexities and shaping communities and tackling the challenges we face.
Yeah, maybe makes you feel a bit more empowered to engage in those local discussions and decisions.
Absolutely. So maybe a final thought to leave you with.
Considering everything we've touched on, what do you see as the most pressing planning challenge in your community? And how might some of these standards or ideas we've discussed offer potential solutions?
Yeah, something to definitely